All right, so today is going to be a little different. We are going to start a new module that is not traditionally part of, good morning, not traditionally part of this class, I don't think. We aren't going to take too much time on it. I mainly want you guys to know that these tools exist in case you want to explore elsewhere. I am not expecting you guys to do very much with anything we're learning, just want you to have the real basic principles down. So far, we have learned vector graphics and raster graphics. Today we are going to start using generative design, which will hopefully build on the principles we learned in both of those. We are going to be entering the world of programming. Has anyone here done any programming, any coding? A little bit? A little bit? A little bit?
Oh yeah, a lot.
Oh yeah?
Well,
What?
JavaScript kind of stuff.
JavaScript? Excellent. We're going to be using JavaScript in this class. Anyone here used JavaScript before? A little bit? Great. That's awesome. That's really cool. I'm really surprised that anyone here has. Who here can tell me what HTML is? Yeah?
Not completely. It's like a coding. It's the opposite of C. It's like CSS, but not completely like. If you don't know what CSS is, that didn't make any sense.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Anybody else have a more basic definition? Yeah?
Hypertext markup language.
Exactly right. Hypertext
Ew.
stands for hypertext markup language. It is just a markup language, which means that you have tags. So if you had an H1 tag, that means it's a headline. So if you have a H1 tag next to the word dogs, it's going to make it big and bold. And you won't see the words H1, you'll just see dogs, big and bold. It marks up the text that's on the page. That's how all websites were back in the early 90s, just straight HTML. People wanted a little more control over how things looked, and so they started adding style to the HTML. Blue backgrounds, or they make this font super bold, or this kind of font slightly less bold, or any...
The fun stuff.
Yeah, the fun stuff. It makes it pretty. Then people started making really complex websites that were hundreds of pages long, or interactive, or anything like that. And rather than retype or copy and paste that style onto every single HTML page, because every time you click and it goes to a different space, that's usually a whole new file, HTML file, that you're navigating to on the server. So, rather than copy and paste that same text over and over and over again, they developed a language called CSS, which stands for Cascading Style Sheets. There will not be a quiz on this. This is just for general contextual information. We will be working with these things a little bit, but real introductory here. And I'm not expecting much. This is not a computer science class. So, Cascading Style Sheets lets you put all of the style for your entire collection of websites. Like, think of it like a magazine. It's the branding for the magazine entire, rather than so that the entire magazine can look consistent with itself. So you can have one cascading style sheet that's referenced by every web page. That's all CSS is. So HTML is the mannequin. CSS are the clothes on the mannequin. Make sense? Everyone with me? Mm-hmm. JavaScript. Pardon?
The code, that's where you're going to get to.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
So
and
functions. Pardon?
And functions and stuff?
A little bit, yeah. Yeah. So JavaScript, websites, again, back in the late 90s were not very interactive. It's just basically like a newspaper on the computer. You just read it. These days, you expect a lot from websites. Google Drive, for example, or all of, like, now Google Documents is just like an entire web-based application that you interact with and do things with. And all of that is run by JavaScript. JavaScript is the programming magic that you can do anything with. It is the wizard that animates the mannequin. Does that make sense? Everyone with me? All right, cool. So we're going to watch a very short video that says everything that I just said. Modules, and let me publish all this stuff. You will now find everything that we're doing in today's class in Module 5. Doop.
To Today I'll show you that you can build just about any kind of website with Wix Code.
Turn you down.
Wix Code is built as a layer on top of the already awesome Wix editor. So you get the power of code paired with stunning design features.
Every web page on the internet uses HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Think of them as the foundational coding languages of the internet. Just like how Belgium has 3 languages, French, Dutch, German, web pages also have languages. In the case of websites, their languages are HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Sure, you may have heard of them, but do you really know how they work? Web development is what you see when you go to a website. I call them, tres amigos. HTML is hypertext markup language, or the builder. CSS is cascading style sheets, which I consider the artist. And JavaScript, the wizard. They're all different languages and work differently, but HTML, CSS, and JavaScript need one another to make a website. Imagine you want to code this homepage using HTML, but just HTML. HTML essentially would define all the content, the text, the images, the links, but without CSS, the artist, and without JavaScript, the wizard, an HTML-only website would look like this. CSS adds the styling to a website. CSS can't live without HTML, or else there's nothing to style. It's responsible for outlining the colors, the fonts, and the positioning of content. Your website will now look like this. Now we come to JavaScript, the wizard. Pop-up error messages, the autocompletes that you use, that is all JavaScript. Now that you understand how it works and the 3 amigos, here are 3 things to remember about HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. 1, they make up what is called front-end web development. Front-end web development is what you see when you land on a page, as opposed to back-end web development is actually what makes an application on the web work. 2, web browsers like Firefox and Chrome translate these 3 languages into the visual web page. Without a browser, these languages are just words on a page. Sometimes, because of this, websites look slightly different on Chrome, Firefox, and definitely look different on Internet Explorer, because all of these browsers translate a little differently. 3, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript are constantly evolving. It's just like any language. These coding languages have a history. They've been around for a few years now. Right now, the standard language procedures for HTML, CSS, and JavaScript are called HTML5. There's even a body and a society online that manages the rules and best practices of how to build for front-end web development. So in the beginning, you actually had HTML controlling a lot of visual aspects. You used bold tag to make text bold, you used a center tag to make your text centered, but over time, after the 90s, you actually had CSS making up most of that. In the beginning, JavaScript was mostly for pop-ups, and now it animates most of our websites. So whatever you see on the World Wide Web, you have los tres amigos to thank for it.
Cool. Any questions so far? All right. So, this may or may not be obvious to everyone in the room. Who can define the cloud for me? Anyone? Grace? No?
I'm not 100% sure what it is.
Okay, great.
The cloud.
Yeah, when people say it's on the cloud, what do they mean?
It's like I don't know if it's server based or not, but it's where like all the information is put into.
Great. That's a fine place to start with and gives me an idea of where we are as a class. So far, with Photoshop and Illustrator, we've been saving those files on our local hard drive. Everything is on each individual computer. When we access a website or anything on the cloud, that means it's on a hard drive in California or in another country. It's still a file on a hard drive. It's just somebody else's hard drive. It's a giant hard drive. It's probably a giant room full of hard drives with a little bit of allocation dedicated to us or our website. So whenever we go to a website, we're accessing same text files, HTML files, on a server somewhere. Everybody with me? Great. So we can look at those text files on any website by going to the developer tools. Every web browser, the web browser is the interface between our computer and the rest of the internet. It is what can read the HTML markup. So if we go to a Word document, for example, the Word document shows us the paragraphs of text we wrote for our term paper, right? That is all, if you looked at the actual code of that, it would be very, very marked up with a lot of things that Microsoft Word recognizes and says to make bold or italic or anything like that. Make sense? The web browser does that for HTML pages and CSS and JavaScript. So it is what can interpret these things. So if you go to the Microsoft of Mozilla Firefox, Microsoft Edge, and Chrome are kind of the three most popular current web browsers, though there are many. And I'd always recommend using Firefox myself. It's a non-profit, and it has great security features. There are things that I use either Chrome or Firefox for myself, and if anybody ever wants to talk more about that, I'm happy to give advice. But we are going to be using Firefox in this class. I believe it's installed on every computer. If you go down, you can do what I'm doing here in any web browser, but it's a different path to get there. So I'm going to show you how to do it in Firefox. If you click here and go down to Web Developer, you will see all of these tools. Page source is how you look at just the HTML. So this is what the HTML markup looks like for this YouTube page I was at. You can see it's pretty nonsensical, but it's all human language, by and large. Trying to get to any actual text written here. Not seeing a whole lot. But you can see links up at the very top to scripts. Anything that says script is linking to a JavaScript file, which again is just a text file with human readable code in it. And anything that says CSS is a link to that CSS file. Wondering if I don't see any immediately, but I'm quite sure it's there.
The CSS would be at the top, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think I'm still in the header, but it doesn't matter. None of this really matters. I just wanted to demonstrate it. What we're going to be using most in this course, in this module, is the web console. So if you go to Developer and Web Console, you'll get this little area down here. That will show us a little bit what's going on with the JavaScript that's happening. It is a bit of a dangerous tool. You can write JavaScript into the console and crash your website, or if you're logged into an account, like if somebody tells you to copy and paste something in the console, you probably should not do that. So we're going to be using it mainly for information. We'll go back there. So let's talk about what programming languages are. Your computer speaks zeros and ones. Your computer follows a set of instructions that are written in zeros and ones. We as humans cannot understand zeros and ones, especially not millions upon millions upon millions of zeros and ones. So we need a way to speak to the computer. That's what any programming language is. And there are many. JavaScript is just one. It happens to be the one that kind of accidentally became the norm for the internet. And that's really only, I think, because, and I'm not a computer scientist, I'm a hack, so don't quote me on any of the historical information exactly, but I believe it's because Chrome happened to incorporate a compiler for JavaScript early on that moved really fast, much faster than any other JavaScript compiler, which made JavaScript interactions on the web much faster, which made everybody be able to use JavaScript on the web much more easily. And then everybody else followed suit. So I believe that in around 2005, Chrome made JavaScript usable enough for the internet. Java is another language we're going to be talking about. Java and JavaScript are not the same thing. Java is Java won't run in a web browser. The only reason JavaScript runs in a web browser is because a compiler for JavaScript is built into all current web browsers. A compiler is basically a translator. It's what translates that human-readable code into those zeros and ones that the computer can understand. Does that make sense to everyone?
You mean like JGrass or something like that?
Don't know what JGrass is.
It's like something like used to. I think I took a class on Java. I'm not sure, but keep going.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't know what it is. Any programming language will need something like that to turn what you've written into something the computer can understand. And the only reason we're using JavaScript in this class is because it's built in to every web browser, which makes it really accessible. You don't need to download anything. You don't need to install anything. Python, for example, if you wanted to program in Python, you would need to download a bunch of different tools and install them on your computer for your computer to be able to interact with it. Does that make sense to everyone? So, that's JavaScript. So, that brings us to processing. Who here has heard of processing? Anyone want to tell me about processing? Anyone?
I'm not gonna explain.
No? Has anyone used processing? What have you done in processing?
I don't remember.
All right, that's fine. So, processing was started by two guys. It's built on Java. Let's talk about libraries. Libraries for a programming language are basically a program that somebody wrote in that language to make the program do something that you need to do over and over and over again, and that everybody else might need to do over and over and over again. So rather than have every single person code it, you just download the library. It's like an attachment, an addendum to the programming language, or a book already written in the programming language that when your program can just access that program that was already written in it. Does that make sense to everyone? So processing was built on top of Java. It is sort of like a Java library. It kind of changes how you write things in Java to make it more understandable for people who aren't programmers. It's still pretty unintelligible and still has a really steep learning curve, but nothing like Java. And it's way easier to very quickly get running. So I'm going to take us to the processing website right now. We are not going to be using processing in this class, but I want everybody to see this. So processing.org, brings us to this website. This is Daniel Schiffman, who we'll be meeting in a moment. He does a lot of free tutorials online about processing, P5, all this stuff. P5 is what we're going to be using, and I'll get to that in a moment. So if you click on Download Processing, you choose your operating system. It'll download as a zip file. And you boop it. You boop it. You wait. Come on. Cool. And then it'll give you a processing application. Yes, I want to open this. Yes, I would like to open that. Get started. Cool. So this is what processing looks like. It's basically just a little text editor. But you'll see that it has lines here, which are useful for debugging. When a computer can only do exactly what you tell it to. While we are doing these experiments for this module, you will find that often your computer doesn't do what you told it to. And it's not that your computer is not following the directions, it's that you told it to do something that you didn't mean to. So debugging is the process of figuring out where you told it wrong. And so it'll say error on line 53. And so having any text editor with these line numbers on it is very useful. You could do everything we're doing in this class in Notepad or text editor, but it's missing some features. You'll see there are no line numbers. It won't highlight or bold variables or functions, which are things we'll talk about in a minute. So it's useful to have a text editor designed for programming rather than trying to do this in Notepad or Word or the text editor. So I'm just going to use a pre-made example. Processing comes with a bunch of examples. Let's go for basics. Let's go for typography. And let's click a letters example. So this is what Java-based processing looks like. And when we hit play, it'll just run our little program. And this is our program. I have no idea what it does, but it just seems to be showing us some letters. Let's look at something a little more advanced. Demos, graphics, wiggling. No idea what that's going to do. Boop. We hit play, and it runs the program, and whatever they program does this. Does that make sense, everyone? So, processing is great. It runs independently. You'll see it's not in a web browser. It's not easily shareable. You can throw somebody the sketch, but they can't really use it without downloading processing and running that set of instructions. Processing programs are called sketches because it's for artists. Make sense? So it'll have a sketch file in a folder, and you can share that sketch file with anyone else, and they can run it in their processing app. There are other ways to share it, but they're a little more complicated. Anyway, P5 is much more easily shareable because it's in a web browser, and everybody has a web browser on their computer. So a project was started to get processing like language, the kind of easy for artists, like draw a line from X to Y. That's pretty hard to do in Java or JavaScript in any way that makes sense to a non-programmer. In processing, it's basically line, start here, end here. Make it this color. So it's much easier. So after processing was made, a bunch of volunteers started trying to get that language into JavaScript. And so they made a bunch of JavaScript libraries that they call P5. And I will show that in a moment. But first, I'm going to introduce Daniel Schiffman, who, as I said, has a lot of free profiles about all things programming, but especially processing in P5. Oh, it's on double speed. My apologies. Start again.
Did you think that learning coding would be really rough? Throw your hands up in the air and say enough's enough. Do you want to learn to code and make some awesome stuff? Learn it anyone can when you're coding with Dan Whether you're a pro or this is all brand new. Learn the overarching concepts and some fun stuff too. And with Dan as your guide, come along with your ride on. Make a crazy pixel mirror to reflect your face. You can make it jump to light speed into outer space. You can generate a maze that can go on for days. You can make your own terrain and some purple rain. You can make a retro game to see how it's done. And then tweak a piece to make it yours for everyone. Make some fractally trees or Twitter bots if you please. And when the seeds are sown, you can make them your own. Write the colors you code, you can follow the road to.
Not your normal geeky computer guy.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. What is with the blur effect? The one thing that was driving me crazy about the whole thing.
No idea. So he's a total goofball. His lectures can sometimes be a little hard to follow, but they are all free online, and you can't argue with that. That book he's holding in the beginning is his textbook, which is amazing. It is not something I would recommend starting with. should probably go through a set of basic tutorials. If you're into this stuff, you should go through tutorials before trying to tackle this book. But this book is amazing, and it's totally free online. The Nature of Code. It is built around creating nature-based algorithms. So trying to recreate systems that we encounter in our daily life for design purposes or programmatic purposes. And it's just awesome. So, can't recommend it enough. And now I'm going to let him say most of what I said about processing in P5.
Hello, I'm making a video.
Also double speed.
Yeah, that was the
I watch most things on YouTube on double speed.
why.
Because they're painfully slow most of the time. And if you watch it with subtitles, then it's more like you don't need to hear everything. You can read it all, and you can kind of just get information in faster.
If
So
you're a fast reader.
if you're a fast reader, and often 1.5 speed is often a little. If you're really trying to learn something better than double
Oh,
speed. But
I'm making a video. You are watching a video, I think. This video, the goal of this video is to talk about something called P5.js. What is P5.js? Who should you or might you be thinking about learning this thing called P5.js from the very, very beginner stage without any experience with anything else whatsoever? I am recording. And what might you use it for? And what's going to happen? Am I making more videos, less videos, that sort of thing? So first, let me give you a little context, actually. Let's start with a little context. There is this thing called processing. Processing is a project that started in 2001 by Casey Reese and Benjamin. I like to call him Benjamin. I don't know what to say. Ben Fry, Casey Reese and Ben Fry, the two of them were students together at the MIT Media Lab, designers, artists, programmers, trying to make a tool that could help them with their own work. Since then, since 2001, this idea of creative coding, it's a complex term, but creative applications through programming. I like to think of it as creative expression through programming. How do you communicate, express your ideas? While making computational tools. It's also really like, if you know how to learn to program, there's a lot of like learn to program, everyone's got to learn to program, kind of stuff going on these days. Take a deep breath, relax. You don't need to know how to program. There's lots of great stuff in the world. You can learn to play the violin, that's a wonderful thing. But there is an aspect of learning to program that is very powerful in that software is something that drives so much of what we use. And if you want to not be stuck just kind of using whatever software, other people, large corporations, if you want to be able to express yourself in new and different ways, learning to program is a great way to do that. Also, and this is going to kind of come around full circle here, learning to program and have the results of what you program go in a browser on the web so that other people can see those things that you can share and distribute easily. This is a very powerful thing. So interestingly enough, processing, when it was first created, was built on top of a programming language called Java, which was all the rage back in 2001. And one of the reasons why Java was invented, one of the reasons why processing used Java, is that you could make these things called applets. And applets would run in a web browser. So you could program anything in processing, upload it to the web, distribute it, the world would see it, become rich and famous, or even...
Just to tie that into what I said, you would need to download an extra thing to make Java run in a web browser. So it was doable, but still not ubiquitous or universal. Does that make sense? Great.
Better, you don't become rich and famous, but you do something good for the world, or both, perhaps. Then it made a lot of sense. Fast forward 14 years later, 2015. When was the last time you saw a Java applet on the web? If you saw it, it was just basically an experience with like a giant error message and told your browser crashed and nothing worked. The language these days of the browser is something called JavaScript. And I'll say a bit more about that in a minute. JavaScript allows you to program and create all sorts of exciting things that happen in a web browser. If you're interested in creating unique and animated and creative web content, learning JavaScript, learning P5.js is something you might be interested in. Now, I don't remember what year, 2013, 14, sometime 15, no, 15th this year. Not 14, that's 2 years. Sometime in the last couple years, a bunch of us were talking, and we asked the question, what language would you pick if processing were being invented today? And somebody that answered that question in an interesting way, her name is Lauren McCarthy. So Lauren McCarthy began a project in collaboration with the Processing. Processing is a not-for-profit foundation, so it's about to say Processing Foundation. This is a totally different video than the last one I made that I threw away. But you don't know that. So Lauren said, okay, well, what if processing were being invented today and the language, instead of Java, was JavaScript? So this is what P5.js is as a project. I should just briefly mention there's another wonderful project called Processing.js. I know this is like crazily confusing. I just want to briefly mention it. Processing.js was a project started by John Ressig, and many other people have worked on it since then. And Processing.js sort of tries to solve this other problem. Your Java code can't run on the web as an applet anymore. What if we could secretly, or not so secretly, but what if we could behind the scenes translate it to JavaScript so that it ran there? But this project, P5.js, is different in that it is a new project. We can now think wonderfully and happily about what that thing called processing that I briefly spoke about, but mostly right now, for the purpose of these videos, we can now ignore this. P5.js is an environment, a simple, hopefully simple and beginner-friendly environment to help you learn JavaScript, to make applications, computational, creative, interesting, hopefully interesting things happen in the browser. And eventually, you could go in a lot of routes with this. You might make art, you might make data visualization, you might make websites as like a web designer. There's lots of paths that you might take from this basic set of videos that I hope to make. Actually, I think that's just about the full context. There's some other pieces to, how do you make something happen in the web browser? You need more than JavaScript. You need these other things called HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. But I think what I want to do now, very briefly, and I'm going to pick this up in the next video, is just look at open P5.js and do a few things with it, just so you get a sense of what kinds of things it can do. And what would be great is if I had a video that showed you, you hear a whole bunch of awesome projects that are made with these kinds of tools. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of really amazing JavaScript frameworks. So I think a missing piece here that I can say is, so just like processing was built on top of Java, it's a little bit different here. P5.js is not really built on top of JavaScript. It is a set of, boy, this is a hard one. And I was doing so well, I was just going to transfer myself over to the computer, and nothing was going to get too shaky and weird. But what I would like to say, I think what is useful to think of here for a moment is P5.js is two things. One of these things is it's a library of functions. So
I want to pause and say that processing, I said it was like a library. It is kind of like a library, but it is built on top of it. It is a different thing than Java, even though it's based on Java and uses Java as a foundation. And just to kind of back up and say what he's saying, Java P5 is exactly a library. It is an addendum. So anyway.
Here's a great way of thinking about it. Let's say you want to learn JavaScript, and you go to Google, and JavaScript, boom. Whoa, there's a lot of stuff out there. There's like a million stack overflow posts, which are like places where people ask questions. There's like 15 million this.js things that you could learn, and there's something called jQuery, and there's so much. So one of the goals, I think, at least of P5.js, is to give you a little bit of a sandbox, a walled garden to learn some of the basics. And for that, you get a library of functions to draw a circle, or draw a rectangle, or set a color. So you can just use some basic drawing functions to learn some of these beginner steps of programming. The other thing it is, and I think I need to move over to the computer here. This camera turned off. Hold on a sec. Okay. I think I'm here now. Oh, there I am. So the other thing it is this thing here. Sam Levine has created something called the P5JS editor. What this means is an application, a program on your computer that you can launch and just start typing some code in and get your feet wet and start to experiment and learn a bit about code without having to worry about all of the larger pieces of things that you need in order to like make something happen in a web page. We're going to do it very simply here. So let's look at that for a second. So I'm going to launch this. By the way, I just downloaded it. I've used it before. But I haven't on this computer. So, oh, look, see, you can even see this. P5 is an application download from the internet. Are you sure you want to open it? So now's the time where you can say, I'm just going to go learn to play the violin. Or I'm going to go play frisbee, I don't know, football, soccer, I don't know, whatever, outside. Well, sure. Okay, but I'm going to open it because I live in a cave, although I have sunlight this year. And, a newer version of P5 is available. I don't want to download it right now. I'm just okay. Oops, I do want to download it.
Don't worry, it's okay anyway.
Lots of things have gone wrong now. This here, I'm gonna like zap you so you don't remember that last 30 seconds. So this here is P5JS, the application, the editor. Sorry, this is the P5JS editor. And if you look at it, it's already filled in a little bit of code for you. So you can start to see, to learn a program, I have to learn some strange new language and syntax. Function, draw, parentheses, curly bracket, curly bracket. These are some things that will come to light in your, if you're for the first time watching this video and looking at programming. So one thing, what I'm going to do a couple things here real quick. One thing I'm going to do is I'm going to type in create canvas. And then down here to draw, I'm going to type rectangle. I'm going to type some other numbers. And then I'm going to zoom back out and hit play. And we can see here, look what's happened. I wrote something that says create canvas. And what did that do? It made a canvas. That's the canvas. Then down here I wrote something that said rect, short for rectangle. What did it do? It made a rectangle. So these are the first pieces. These are the first things that I'm going to show you in the next video. What lines of code do you start to write, and what do those lines of code do? And with P5JS here, the first things that we're going to learn is how to draw a picture. And by the way, this canvas is actually a little mini web browser that's open. So as more and more videos come to pass, we can peel back some of these layers and see how you might take this and put it on the web somewhere, share it, allow people to interact with it, that sort of thing. So this video is okay. I give it a B+. I think I'm going to keep it though and upload it, and someday there will be a better one. Probably never, but anyway. So this is the end. I'm going to make another video and then upload that one too, and you can watch many of them. I'm keeping a list. I'm going to try to put a link in the description. So I'm going to give a list of all the videos I'm going to make. I'm going to make a lot of intro ones and then some project-based ones, which are more like how to take a Google spreadsheet and visualize it as a graph in JavaScript and try to do that in a short 10 minutes. So that's sort of my plan for the semester. It's 11:30. I got a little time before I'm going to go have some lunch and make a few more. Okay, I'm turning this off.
Cool. So that P5 program he has, I don't want you to use it for this project, or at least not for the beginning. If once we're in open lab and you guys are just working, you guys can do it however you see fit. You'll see a website today called Open Processing, which has everything already on the web. But at least for the beginning, while we're learning how to do this together, I want you all to do it the long way, so that you can really see how these different parts are interacting with each other, and thereby see how all of the internet and web pages work. So you can see that the P5 program really matches how we were using this processing program. It's a window where you type in, and then when you hit play, it opens the program window. This is called an Integrated Development Environment, an IDE. If you ever go beyond this class to work in other programming languages, you'll probably download some sort of IDE, some sort of integrated development environment to work in that programming language. Android Studio is an example. Java is still ubiquitous. He was talking about back in 2001, that was all the rage. It is a really stable and robust and tried and true programming language. And it is the foundation for all things Android. And so it still runs on everything. And so Android Studio is a Java-based integrated development environment for making Android apps that is freely available from Google. Anyway, we are not going to be using an integrated development environment for our P5 work. That P5 program was another IDE. That was an IDE for P5. We are going to be using a text editor and a web browser, and our hard drive Explorer, which is Finder on Macs. So I do want everybody to do this with me. If you could log into your computers and go to P5, I think it's p5js.org? Yeah, p5js.org, and download what's there.
The complete file or any of the single files?
Download the complete library.
Thank you.
p5.js complete. And then I want you to open a Firefox window and make it take up half of your screen.
What is it? P5.js what?
p5js.org.
There's like 3 different versions on here. It's asking me to.
Download this one on the screen, p5.js complete. I did not know there was processing for Android now. That's pretty cool. So when you download that, you will.
Hang on.
Pardon?
Hang on.
Sorry. Anyone need help? Do you need me to come over, Bobby?
You just open up in Firefox and you open a tab,
Yeah. That's.
or is this on your?
There's a dot there, so it's just p5, no dot. JS. You're fine. I think I may even said. Yeah, and then download. Cool. Anybody else having trouble? You good? All right. So when you unzip that file, you should see this folder: add-ons, empty example, and then these two.
Oh, wait, where'd you get that pop-up box?
This, I went to my downloads folder, and I clicked the zip file, which opened the folder.
I don't have that.
Did you download? Go click download. That pops it down there, and then boop that, and then boop that. Cool. Anybody else? It is unzipped. It's just, it kind of unzips automatically on modern Macs, I think. So there you are. Cool. Everybody at this folder.
No.
Nope. Cool. Here you are. You're fine. That's what I want you to be looking at.
Oh, yours looks different though.
Just because I have this button checked. You're just looking at icon view, one to the right. You're looking at icon view, and I was looking at it in detail view. That's all. But we're at the same spot. Anybody else need help? Cool. All right. So these are the actual files on our actual hard drive similar to anything that makes up a web page. The only thing missing is that there might be let's just duplicate. Nobody follow me in this. I'm just demonstrating something. In a real website, there might be something like style.css attached to. And so this HTML would point to all of these JavaScript files and to the CSS. And when you go onto a website, on any website, it's doing the same thing just on somebody else's hard drive. It's finding files that look like this in a directory of folders, and directories mean the same thing. So on consumer desktops, we call them folders, but they're really computer directories. They're how things are organized. So there's a directory structure on a server somewhere that has files that look exactly like this on it. So if we, so I'm going to delete style CSS so nobody gets confused. If you double click index.html, it should open in Firefox right here. Assuming I'm going to go to File. No, we can't even do that anymore. I'm going to right click, open with Firefox. Come on, buddy, what you doing? I'm going to drag you over to Firefox. There we go. So what I had to do, I don't know why double clicking it didn't open it, but I drug it onto Firefox and it opened it in a new tab, or maybe in the same tab. And you can see up here that this is the directory structure of my, I'm going to make mine bigger, though I'd recommend you don't, just so you can see this. So instead of going to a website, it's going to my local hard drive. Oh, danger. It's instead of HTTPS, and it's going just to my hard drive in this folder. This is the directory structure, and finding this index.html file. When you go to google.com, this is exactly the same as index.html. Any website is index.html. Web browsers just don't show that, and whenever you go to a website without index.html, it finds the index.html file. That is not important for anything we're doing in this class, but it does help you generally to be aware of if you're ever designing your own websites.
Done this in Firefox.
Pardon?
Should we have started this in Firefox?
Yes, everyone should have Firefox open and hopefully taking up half your screen. You're fine.
I didn't do it in Firefox.
We haven't done anything. You're
I
fine.
just seen this.
Just close that and open Firefox. Cool. Cool, cool, cool. And then open your folder and get it on this half of the screen. Yep. And I would just move this over so it's not on top of Firefox.
Move this over.
I would close this entirely.
Do you want us to go to the Google step, like this step?
No. That was just a demonstration. Sorry. I will make my screen look like how I want everyone's to look. Doop. And then I want everyone to have opened their index.html, which shouldn't show anything. It should just be a white page. I want them to drag that over. And then I want them to go to click here, the little hamburger thing in the top right.
Oh, real quick, how do we get that window that doesn't have anything on it in the past? I'm sorry.
You should be able to double click the index.html in your empty example folder, but I had to drag it over for some reason. I just had to drag it and drop it onto the window in Firefox. Then if you go to this hamburger menu and choose Web Developer, Page Source, you should see what's actually written in the HTML file. Cool. So drag that and just boop it right on there. Cool. That's where we are. Now if you go here and to Web Developer, there we go, Developer, and then go to Page Source. That will show you what's actually written there.
Mine's blank.
Yes, it should be blank. I would recommend you have this take up only half your screen because we're going to be going back and forth between that and something else. So yeah, just keep that as half your screen and then go to here, Developer, page source. And then you'll see that. Anybody, come right back there, Grace?
Sorry.
No, you're fine. If anybody can't see the page source, we need to
I
fix that.
dragged the empty example and got this. I didn't get that.
Cool.
So I didn't, actually, here's something interesting. Real quick. Let me see if I can pull it up again. Look at this. No.
You're fine.
Okay, I'll pull this in here. And it actually gives me options. I can either look at the index or the sketch. Index, it gives me absolutely nothing. Sketch is what I just showed you.
So, you want the index, and that's, so, move this so it takes up half the screen.
Okay.
Bring this to the other half of the screen. And then don't drag the folder, just open, here, pencil that down, and then drag index.html over here. And you'll see exactly what we see now, which is nothing. And go to the table,
Oh,
and then developer,
okay, that's
and
right.
then page source. And then you're where we are.
Thank you.
Sure thing. Cool. So this is even though nothing appeared on the website, you can see that there is something in the HTML file. There is doc type HTML. This tells the browser that, like, yo, this is an HTML file. Then there's a tag, an open tag. Whenever you see a slash before a tag, then again, we aren't going to be using this much in class. This is just general knowledge. I hope that it helps you beyond this class. Whenever you see a forward slash and then the same thing as the other tag, that closes the tag. So the way to call this is open HTML, close HTML. Open head, close head. Open body, close body. So, anything in between the open and close of any given tag follows the instructions of that tag. If it's a header tag, if it were open H1, close H1, it would make it big and bold. It would make it a header. Head does not mean header. Head is where all of the material on your website that you don't want anyone to see but is still super important goes. So the head is, you can think of it as the brains of the website. It's where it links to the CSS file and that JS file. And here you can see it doing exactly that. It's linking to the sketch.js, which is where we're actually going to write our program. So the HTML links to the program, brings in the program file. I actually don't know what editors we have on here, if anything. It looks like we don't have anything, which is frustrating. Open with text edit? Nope. I should have thought of this before. Oh, there. Let's just see if anything is installed on here. And I'm just going to do a quick Google. I'm really sorry about this. On the other computers, Notepad++ was installed, which is what I'd recommend using. So give me a second to figure out what's possible. Yeah, there doesn't seem to be anything native. Does Notepad++ work on Macs? I don't think so. All right. So, for the moment, we're just going to use text editor. Which kind of stinks, but is still totally doable, and will prove how it's totally doable. Don't save. So. We're opening, getting back to where we were, add page source. Cool. So if we right-click the index, so if you don't have right-click currently enabled, go to System Preferences, and then Mouse, and then Secondary Button. Enable the secondary button. And then if you right-click index.html, you can open with text edit. Why?
There's your HTML.
There we go. Weird. Weird. That ain't right. Something weird is happening.
All I have is fetching.
Yeah, when I right click, all it has is open cut copy delete properties.
That's weird.
And then when it says open with and you go under the arrow, it says fetching.
Cool.
When I unclicked it, then I went back and clicked it again and it came up.
Yeah. Forgive me, this doesn't seem to be working for some reason. Give me a second to figure out why. Live demos, everybody. Doop, doop, doop. Yeah, that is not right.
Must take a while for a second.
So apparently text edit doesn't work like Notepad or Word. That's very exciting. So we are going to have to download for today, and that does mean that we will not be able to work this way after today because your computers are all going to delete this program. But let's go right now and download Brackets. Brackets.io. Brackets.io, I believe, works with every software, whether Mac or PC. Just checking to make sure that's true.
Brackets dot what?
Brackets.io.
Do we do that in Firefox also?
Yeah.
Download brackets 1.12.
Yep. Click this big blue button. It'll come down as a DMG file. A DMG is like a virtual disk, a virtual hard drive. So it'll appear like a hard drive on your desktop. And then don't drag it into the applications folder. Just drag it to your desktop. That way it will always... Oh, really?
Did you have a little Dropbox that says you have chosen to open brackets?
Yep. You want to save file.
You said to drag it.
Drag it to your desktop. Don't try dragging it to your applications folder. I don't think you'll be able to. And if anybody can't get it to their desktop, let me know.
It's not doing anything. It went up here. Do I drag it in?
It went to your downloads folder, so click downloads. And then it's one of these DMGs, so just double click one. That opens the DMG, which will appear as though it's a hard drive. It's a virtual hard drive. There it is. So it came up there, so you just drag it to your desktop. Drag this icon to your desktop. Cool. Right, and then wait. It'll take a second. Cool. So once that downloads, once it's on your desktop, go ahead and open it. Why won't you open? Oh dear Lord. Yes, I want to open you. Yes, pout. Cool. There we go.
Boy, it's taking a long time.
Anybody having trouble? What browser did you use
wasn't sure where I.
Just double click it. That's exactly what I want you to do.
That's so funny because I actually just canceled that video because I thought I was doing it wrong thing.
Nope, you're just not. Yeah, cool.
There it is. Okay.
Cool. So you're there? You got brackets?
So it says brackets installed, or do I just hit next and just completely install it?
Yeah, sorry, Windows. But
Okay. It's still, yeah, it's fine, like it's completed.
everyone here got brackets? You got brackets? Cool. Do you need help, Robin? So you don't want to do any of this. You want to go to brackets.io. Up here on the search bar in the URL writer and type brackets.io. Backs twice. K. ETS. .io. Excellent. Enter. Cool. And hit download brackets. Left click there. I do not know what this is. You should probably close it. Fine. Yeah, just then you can close this. Cool. And then double click brackets here. Great. Then drag this to the desktop. When this finishes, you're going to double click this. You got it open?
Yep.
Cool. Matt, you got it open? Click on the icon there on the left. Yep, and drag that to your desktop. Not to your applications.
It's already in the desktop, yeah.
It is not in the desktop.
Oh, it isn't?
Or I don't see it on the desktop.
Drag it over here.
So drag that blue icon, drag
Oh,
that
that.
all the way to the desktop, to the desktop. Hit X there, on the right. Click that blue
All the
icon.
way over to your blue,
yeah,
to your
what do you-
mountain screen.
I'm in the, I thought I was in the desktop thing.
Oh, you are. I'm
Yeah,
sorry. I thought
yeah.
that was your downloads folder. My apologies.
sorry about that.
Yeah, I'm so sorry to tell you to stop. But yeah, you can drag it there, or you can drag it to the actual desktop. It'll do the same. So sorry.
It's alright.
And you. Oh, you're still going. Close this window for me. Yeah. And so yeah, we're watching that bar. Waiting for that to finish.
Did you get? Yeah, so you click on this. And then it
No
should
reason
move
it should be
up
going
a
so
little.
slow.
No,
It's really fast.
there it goes. So now it takes a while
There.
to
Double
open.
click that.
So then you hit, and it should come up.
Coming right. Yeah, we're just waiting over there.
Yeah, I just got rid of that blue thing.
Yeah, I need to finish this there. So yeah, you should
It's like healing things.
go here. Type brackets. Yep, there it is. So it's installed in your programs folder
So
somewhere.
just click it twice and open it.
Boom, there you are. Now I don't know that the Windows version is the same as Mac version, so we may have some adjustments and everything. to it.
Allow, I'm guessing Windows Defender Firewall is by some features in this app just allow access anywhere.
I would.
Yeah, maybe
You can if you want.
Alright.
Cool. All right. So everybody, are you still?
No, I just accidentally,
Double click that.
actually, I did, it's behind my,
Click there, and then you can drag it out. Cool. So here is a default web page in Brackets. Brackets is a much more robust text editor than I ever meant to introduce in this class. And we won't work with it again because it'll be erased from your computer when you come in on Monday.
It'd be a crying shame that we have to do all those steps again.
You won't. You'll work with something a little easier. But just for today, I want you to see how all these things are talking to each other. Mercifully, we have a really long class. So you can see here, same sort of things. This is a much fuller web page. We can see paragraph tags. So paragraph, welcome to brackets. And then this business is a comment. This is not shown on the web page. When we look at the web page in a moment, you will see that what is brackets is not written. Now, I don't remember exactly. Give me just a moment. So we're going to click Live Preview. Don't follow me here for a moment. Because I'm not entirely sure what's going to happen. Cool. Actually, yeah, go ahead and do that. So click in File, Live Preview. And it should open Chrome, apparently, for some reason, on my computer. And you should see exactly this web page over here. And you can try making an adjustment. See it happen live. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I didn't know if we could do that. I'm just going to go one by one through everybody. Cool. Yeah, and you're probably going to want to make this big next to. So click here and drag all the way up. And then click here and pull it down. Cool. Yeah, and that'll just help you throughout the day. So have this sort of, what you see is what you get. So like if you type here, it'll just happen there. All right, so hit OK. It'll open Chrome. Boom. And then go ahead and go up to the very top of this and just expand it upwards a little bit higher. Or you can drag it all the way up and then, then click here and pull it down. Great. You shouldn't have to do this again. Hit X
No,
here.
I just moved to my filter just in case I need
Oh,
for
cool,
future.
cool. I'm sorry. Yeah. Go to brackets. And pull it over here so you're looking at half screens. Boop, and then drag it down.
Or drag it.
So if you click,
Sorry, I'm trying to say drag the thing.
no, leave that there. Bring your mouse right here, until you a little bit down,
The double arrow.
little bit down.
Sorry, this mouse is not.
You're fine. Bring your mouse down. Bring your cursor down. Bring it up, just a little tiny bit there. That's what we're looking for. That up, down, and then expand the window down. Cool. So that's what I want you to see, and you can probably X out of that. Excellent. Cool, you got it. And so anything you type here will happen in the live preview there. And you got it?
I have no clue what just happened.
What just happened?
I have no clue. It just refreshed.
You
We'll have a blue
click on
stripe for
index.html. Cool. And then this is your stuff there. You have a dual view thing happening. You might want to no split. Cool. There you go. Weird. And you might want to expand this down to let you see it better. Cool. And anything you type there will happen live there. You two good? Where's Shamanda? Need help? Excellent. Cool. So, hit close out of this. Go to File. Yep. Live Preview. Hit OK. And then move this over. Actually, hit brackets just so we're all looking at exactly the same thing. And move this over to the right.
But his blue stripes
Just
are in
put
a
it like
different
up the top, and then click here, and drag it down. Cool. And then now anything you type here will happen there. And you can kind of see how the tags work. You can see the header, the paragraphs, the
Oh,
yeah.
pull that down.
Yeah. Yeah, and then I would go over here, click, and then I pull this over so you're all yeah. That's what I want people to be looking at. You good, Cam? Excellent. I would really recommend doing it exactly like I have it up there. Like pull this to the right, pull this to the left. Yes. Cool, cool, cool. You're doing good. Cool, cool. You doing good, Zach? Yeah. You gotta do the live feed. So go to File. Click here. Go to File. Live preview. Hit OK. Open Chrome. Cool. And then it'll show you this website, which is the brackets explanatory, and you can type here and it'll happen live over there. Cool. So you're fine. You're fine. Click brackets. Move that over to the right. And click here and pull it down. And then click File.
Oh, here.
Yep. And Live Preview. Okay. You're doing fine, Grayson. I'm sorry to hear that. Can I do it? I'm sorry.
Sorry,
You're fine. If you need to step out or anything, you just do whatever you need to do.
I'm trying to keep up with everybody, but I'm like, Alright, so what are we doing right now?
This is your caught up, right?
Okay.
So right now, this is showing everything that's right here. If you retype anything there, you'll see it happen live over here.
Oh, that's actually cool.
So if you don't worry about anything, just worry about feeling.
I'm sorry.
You're fine. You're fine. Cool. All right. So hopefully, yeah. What's up?
So you have those two blue bars and you typed in between them. We don't have those.
That just happened because I was messy and sloppy. You shouldn't.
And you ended up with blue.
Yeah, I just clicked and did a bunch of random stuff. I have no idea what I did. I think it's because it's showing me where I'm clicked at the moment. So I'm not telling you to write exactly my gibberish or click exactly what I'm doing.
Anything, anywhere on this, so you type it changes.
Yeah, it's a live preview. This sort of, when these things are built together, it's kind of called a WYSIWYG. A what you see is what you get. So like you can, this kind of live preview thing is built into a lot of tutorial websites and kind of built into open processing, which is what we're going to be using for our assignment, apparently, because there's no text editor. So this text editor is really robust, and apparently now we're going to be working with Chrome, because apparently the live preview function works with Chrome. No, we aren't. We're still going to work with Firefox and not use the live preview. That's what we're going to do. So. Hopefully everybody has gotten a chance to play at this point and seen how the tags work. I don't need you to memorize any tags. You're not going to use any tags in this class, for now at least. We may get into that a little bit when we build our own websites later, but we're going to be using kind of prefab stuff. But you should know what tags are and what they look like. Does anybody have any questions about anything up to this point? Yep.
So I just tried to type something in there and it didn't type in.
Ooh, let me see. What did you try to do?
Well, it didn't show up. I just typed.
You need to type here.
Oh.
This is what controls this. This is the printed newspaper. This is the editor that prints the newspaper.
So where do we type that?
Anywhere you want.
Oh.
All of this text is transformable.
Okay, I see. All right. Sorry.
You're fine. You're fine. So one thing to note is that this is a comment. Where it says what is brackets isn't there. So if you type where it's commented out, it won't show up on the screen. That's the only place I think you can type where it won't make any difference. In the comment. The comment is there for developers. The comment is there for people who are looking at your program or your web page or anything to guide anybody who might be following your footsteps. Or, pardon? Or notes, yeah. Notes for yourself. Like, I wrote this function to do this. This is probably a good time to talk a little bit about some coding terminology. So, a function is just a set of instructions. It is a collection of instructions. Do X, Y, and Z. And so what's helpful about a function is that if you need to do X, Y, and Z a lot, you don't want to tell the computer to do X, Y, and Z every time you want the computer to do X, Y, and Z. If you call the function walk, and walk is put your right leg forward, put your left leg forward, and you want to walk across the room, instead of saying over and over and over again, right leg forward, left leg forward, you can just write walk, 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 walk. And then that immediately reduces the size of your program by half, because instead of 2 instructions, you're giving it 1 instruction over and over and over again. Does that make sense? So a function is just a collection of instructions. Every time you want something to happen, you put it in a set of instructions, and then you tell the computer to do that set of instructions. A variable is another really key concept. A variable is an empty box that you can put any information into. It's a way to store information, say a number or a word. When you put your name into a text box and it remembers your name later, it was stored in a variable as what's called a string. A string is text. Text is string. Characters are strings for variables. For data purposes, a string is text. So you can store a number in a variable, in an empty box. The way computers deal with numbers are kind of threefold. Boolean is just 0 or 1, true or false, 0 and 1, on or off. Those are the kind of three ways to think of a Boolean. On or off, true or false, 0, 1. Make sense? You can think of it like a power switch, or for a circuit, like a 0, there's no information going through. A 1, true, on, there's information going through on the circuit. So. An integer, we should all know what integers are. They are whole numbers from negative infinity to positive infinity. Negative 1 is an integer. Positive 3 is an integer. Float is a little weirder. Float values have decimal points. So if you need something more precise than a whole number, than an integer, I guess whole numbers aren't integers. Integers are whole numbers in the negative. If you need something more precise than an integer, you use a float number. Now, if you're going outside of this class and you're using the normal processing that's built on Java, when you make a variable, you're going to have to define what sort of data goes into that box. And for me, when I was learning, that was really confusing. Because it'll say Boolean X. What is even a Boolean? I don't know. And what is even an integer or float? I don't know. And it's kind of non-intuitive to look those things up. So if you see Boolean, integer, float in processing, that just is defining a variable. It's creating an empty box for you to put that type of information into. In JavaScript, you don't need to define what sort of data goes in the box, so long as you consistently only put the same kind of data inside that box. Once you put a number into an empty box, you can't put a string into it. Does that make sense? So everything is just named variable in JavaScript. Immediately, that makes JavaScript way easier and way more intelligible to me, anyway. So, variable, Boolean. Yes. Function. We probably won't be using arrays in this class, but you should be aware of what arrays are. They're really just a list of numbers. This becomes immediately important for us because any raster graphics is just a list of numbers. Did we talk about the red, green, and blue channels? And each one's 0 to 255? That's not new information? Cool, yeah. So any pixel array, any pixel in our list of pixels has 3 numbers associated with it, red, green, and blue. So if you look at the processing pixel array, it'll just be a long list of numbers. If you have 1,000 pixels in your picture, it'll be a 3,000 number long list of 0 to 255 for the red, green, and blue channels. And then the computer interprets that and pops those numbers into color representations on our screen. So an array is a really important concept and really powerful concept that you can use for all sorts of things, but it's just a list of numbers. It can get really confusing how to find exactly what number in an array. So we aren't really going to work with them very much. The other thing to remember about arrays, when you're counting that list of numbers, arrays start at 0, not 1. So when you're counting pixels in a 1,000 pixel image, would be 0 to 99, not 0 to 999, not 1 to 1000. There's a whole internet meme thing about arrays starting at 1, which is very silly, but arrays don't start at 1, arrays start at 0. Make sense? Any questions so far? Great. So now, let's open in brackets. We're going to open Firefox again. We're going to go to in brackets, File, Open. We're going to go to Downloads, look for that P5 folder, look for empty example, and then click index.html. And then we'll see that same business that we saw in the source code before.
Can you repeat that
Sure.
process again?
Totally lost.
Yes.
So in brackets, we're going to go to File, up at the top left. We're going to go to Open. And then we're going to go to Downloads.
Okay, file, open,
P5, empty example. And I'll come by one and make sure that everybody's on the same spot. Cool. Brackets is here. This is the web page for brackets. This is brackets. So click here. Click here to, now we're in brackets.
Okay,
Go to File. Open. Downloads. P5. Empty example. Index.html. Click that and click Open. And then click on Firefox down here to just make sure that that's the browser we're using. Cool, we are. Great, you're good. Cool, as soon as you click index.html, I think you'll be fine. Click that, click Open. Cool, now do me a favor and click on Firefox to make sure that's what's open. Cool, it is. You're great. Cool, so go here, click there, click File. Open, Downloads, P5, empty example, and index. Open. Cool, great. And now click Firefox just to make sure the Firefox is what? Cool, good, we're good. All right, Rob. Hey. You don't seem to have the same thing, so click Cancel. Go to Firefox. Make this big. Great. Go to File. I'm sorry, click here in the search and type P5JS. 5JS. .org. Enter. And then click Download. And then click Complete. Hit Save. Great. Now click down here. Click P5. Click right there. If you clicked on the letters, click on the icon. Double click. There we go. And now go back to brackets. Click here. Go to File. Open. And then P5. Double click. Empty example. And index. There you go. Cool. Now you're looking at what everyone else is looking at. You got it? You got it. Cool, cool, cool. You got it? Come in.
So we file it here in Firefox.
No. In brackets.
In this one?
Yeah. Really strong. Oh, nope. X out of that. Go to brackets. There we go. I would make this happen. Go to File. Open. Probably in your downloads folder, wherever that P5.
I'm in.
You're looking at zip. You may need to unzip that first. Good job. Cameron, you got it?
Is it through art?
Yep, you're doing great. Doing great. Doing great. Doing great. Doing great. You,
I don't know how to do the,
you're fine. You're at the same spot I was. Yeah, you're good. You're gonna want Firefox to be front and center. Right? So right now, everybody right-click, except maybe Amanda, who just did this. Right-click Chrome here, and click Quit. That's gonna make Chrome go away. We aren't gonna use Chrome anymore. There will be no. Pardon? I right-clicked Chrome down here, and hit Quit. Cool. Right-click, quit. Come on, quit for me. I'm not even gonna worry. Anyway, so we should all be looking at Firefox on one side and brackets on the other. Now everybody go to Finder. Finder in the bottom left. Click Downloads. Find your P5 folder. Find Empty Example. And drag your index to Firefox like we did before. So we're staring at a blank screen. So on your left, you should be looking at the empty white Firefox, and on your right, the source code for that empty white Firefox. Yeah, just drag index there. Or we don't want to be looking at the page source, so I would just drag index straight over. Cool, great, you're good. Drag, go to P5. Double click. Or pencil it down by hitting the arrow. And then drag index.html over to there. Great, good job.
Same one.
Oh yeah, index, just drag and drop that right in. Boom, you're good. You drag the whole folder, open the folder, and drag index over. Just drag and drop it right there. Cool, you're good. You're good. You got it in there? Reach that? Close. We want, so click on Finder. Find the P5 folder in your downloads. P5, there you are. Double click. And drag index.html right on over to here. Cool, that's what you're looking at. Cool, cool. You got it? Jericho? Cool. Zach, you good? Yeah. Cool. Grace, you're good? Great. Cool, cool, cool. So, teaching this sort of stuff to a class is always a little bit tedious. Thank you all for hanging in there. I hope everyone's learning something. So now, everybody go to the body section. You should see open body, click on brackets, and you should
get rid of the pop-up box that says downloads?
You can if you want. That's just a Finder window. If you click on brackets, it should come in front of it. Yeah, so go to where it says body. This is now the page source, but it's now editable. When we looked at the page source in Firefox, it was not editable. It was just shown to us, revealed to us. Now we're opening it in brackets, which is a text editor, just like Microsoft Word, but for code, and we can now edit it. We are not using the live preview function as we were before with the brackets website. So you'll notice if we go to after the body, after the complete body tag, hit space a couple times, just show the separation, and it's before the close body tag, anything you type will not appear. To make it appear, you need to save it, so File, Save.
Do you want us to follow you?
Yes, everybody should type something after body and do File, Save. And then click on the empty white space in Firefox, and we need to go up here to refresh, reload current page. And then we'll see our text.
Alright, so file, save,
And then up back in Firefox, we need to reload current page. Oh,
yeah,
yeah, click that. Sorry, other people's Firefoxes seem to look different than mine. But yeah, wherever your refresh page, Command R will also refresh page. And then you should see your text. Does anyone not see their text? Coming right over?
Just read what I wrote.
I would like to be clear, I know I code by hand.
Hello, hello. Did you see? Just do me a favor, click here. Command S. And refresh. Weird what's happening.
I think I
I'm on
should
the
change
index.
it in case you see.
You should be. Yeah, I mean, that's how you should be. I wonder if,
I would have put my space, because I'm on 112 in the middle of
no, I
the
think we have things here, so let's just delete these two. Because I think you have this index open, you're typing this.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, I have like 7 key bars, but I didn't know what he was.
Okay, so what do we just do? 1, 2, 5.
Don't download too bad again, don't click that. So, we're going to drag index that here. And we're going to right click this one and open with brackets.
Then we go to File, right? On the brackets page, try Firefox.
So we had to just basically save it.
Fire. Then hit save. Did it automatically? Was that the
Ah, okay, so I was looking at one.
You have two different indexes.
Thank you.
Sure. You're doing good, Zach? You three guys doing good?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. You two doing good? Great. You got Robin, you got Jazz, and everyone, Matthew, you good? Cool. All right, so that is the long way of doing it. And we won't have to do this again next class, but this is how I want to work for the rest of today. Where everything you do to see a change, you need to save the file and then refresh the page. And the reason I want you to do that is because that way will always work. Live previews may not work. IDEs may be more complicated than you can set up at home. But this way you can do with a text editor and a web browser, and it will work anywhere. So. Next, we want to edit the sketch.js file. So I'm going to just real quick, I'm going to close everything that I'm not working in. I only want, you'll see that I have 2 indexes open. One is the brackets web page from before. So I'm going to just close that and not save it. I want to be looking at just the index that I got to show up over here. And then I'm going to close these getting started thing. No, it doesn't seem to let me. I'm just going to collapse. Nope, it won't let me do that either. Hate. Waves of hate. So, I just want to be looking at index.html. Then, I'm going to go to File, Open. And this time, it already took me back to my empty example. If it doesn't for you, it's in Downloads P5, empty example. But I want to open the sketch.js. I'm going to open that. So now I should see index.html and sketch.js. I'm going to walk around and just get everyone back to that point. I'm going to start in the back of the room. You doing good? Yes, you good? Go to, click here. File, open. Downloads, P5, empty example, sketch.js. Cool. Are you 3 good? Cool.
Ooh, hold on, I'm getting like missing links and like error setups.
Oh,
Yeah.
what's going on?
Did you get it?
No problem.
Oh yeah, don't worry about that.
Okay.
Don't worry about those things.
Set it on the screen. Follow that.
You good? Yeah, you're good. You're good. Cool. Robin, go to File, Open, Sketch.js, Open. Cool. You good? Matthew, you good? Yeah. Karen?
Yeah, I think I just got it.
You're not quite good. Click on the top one. Hit the little X there. Save. Don't save. Well, it doesn't matter. We'll never look at that again. Now go to File. Or, yeah, that will probably work if you drag it here. That'll probably, yeah. Cool, that worked.
So what was it that I did? Filed and what? I got
You went
it,
to
but
File, Open, and then you,
I'm just writing it down.
yeah, File, Open, and then you found the JS folder, which was in Downloads P5, Empty Example, Sketch.js. Yep.
Okay.
And you are looking at the wrong thing here. You want to be looking at a white scroll. Cool. And you're good. Awesome. Cool. So, whether you're working in processing or P5, you have two processing-specific functions that will always work in a very specific way. Functions, in general, are just a set of instructions you gave it. These two functions already have a lot of instructions that are hidden from you, a lot of information that if you didn't know, you wouldn't get. So setup happens before everything, all of your instructions happen. If you can create a function and name it whatever you want, like function walk, and you can type anything in there, but you'll always need function setup and function draw. Setup happens before the program initiates. It kind of sets everything up. And then draw happens every frame. You can set your frame rate to be whatever you want, but if you don't do that, it's basically going to happen as fast as your computer can make it happen, which is probably, I'm not even going to guess. But it's really fast. If you have a really heavy program, if you give it a crazy amount of instructions, it'll go really slow. It'll use a lot of computer processing power to do all that math and follow those instructions. And so your frame rate might drop. If you play video games, you probably experience this. When you walk into a room with a whole lot of enemies, your computer starts chugging trying to keep up, and your frame rate drops from 60 seconds to 12 seconds, and the game becomes almost unplayable. Your computer is having a hard time generating that, following all the instructions that the programmers gave it. So. Setup happens once before the program runs. Draw happens every frame. Any function you write, if I wrote function walk, would happen whenever you call that function. So you would need to, nobody follow me here, but just watch. In function draw, you would need to call another function. You would write something that looks a bit like this, walk. So right now, every frame, I'm telling it to look for a set of instructions called walk. And again, nobody follow me here, because this is nonsense. This is just demonstrational. And then I might write function walk, doop, and then left leg plus 1, right leg plus 1, right? And then every frame, it's gonna doop. Pardon? It doesn't. This is nonsense. This wouldn't do anything. I'm just demonstrational and conceptual. Every frame right now, it's right leg, left leg, right leg, left leg. Right now, right leg and left leg don't mean anything to the computer, so the computer would just kick back an error saying, "What are you talking about right now?" Because the computer doesn't understand right leg and left leg. So I might, again, nobody follow me here because this is mostly nonsense. Even before the setup, I might type something like var left leg, var left leg, var right leg. This creates two empty boxes called right leg and left leg. Now the computer has something to attach the terms right leg and left leg to. But you'll notice that I used a lowercase l and then an uppercase L. This is called camel case, and you'll see it used a lot in programming language too, because if you used all lowercase, it would be a kind of unreadable gibberish eventually. Another common strategy that's employed are underscores, left leg, because you can't use spaces. Space separates the string from the string before it. And so var left space leg would be var, the box would be named left, and then leg wouldn't mean anything. So it needs to be attached as one term. So you would either use camel case or underscores. Everybody with me? Cool. Now you'll notice that up here, var left leg is camel case, var right leg is camel case. But down here I misspelled one thing and I have spaces in them. So still, the computer would not be able to tie those things together. I need to make darn sure that I always type everything the same way. Now, left leg plus 1, right leg plus 1.
Could you just click on the pop-up and if you didn't want to finish typing?
Yes, this text editor has a special feature in it to know that you already created a box with that name. So if you start typing something that looks like a thing you named a box, it's going to pop that. It's going to autocomplete that box. Some text editors have that, some don't. It's super useful. Can sometimes be problematic if you're typing something close to the name that isn't the name, or if you have like a right underscore leg and a right camel case leg. Then you're messing yourself up and you're gonna have a bug somewhere that makes the wrong thing happen. So, right now, right leg plus 1, left leg plus 1. Still, there's nothing in those boxes, so how do you add 1 to nothing? You can add 1 to 0, it understands those two things as numbers. But right now, it's not just nothing, it's a nebulous nothing. It is not a number. If I did this right now, it would kick back an error, capital N, lowercase a, capital N. That means not a number. Right leg and left leg right now aren't numbers. If up here I put equals 0, then equals 0, now those boxes are going to contain the number 0. Now when I go down here, these instructions will add 1 to it every frame, and you'll see left leg and right leg increase in value. And now in draw, I'm going to write something, I think it's log.console right leg log.console. I have no idea if this is going to work because I'm a bad programmer. But I'm going to save this. I'm going to...
You want those capitalized, the L and
do. They need to be. Thank you. I'm a bad programmer. Right leg. And then so if I save this, Command S, and then I refresh this page, nothing happens, but that's kind of as it should be because I haven't, it's going to, what I told it to do was show me the numbers, show me what those boxes contain in the console. So I need to open my developer console, web developer, web console. And it doesn't work. Log.console is not a function. Maybe console.log. 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 Command S, refresh. Yep, cool. So it's logging them every single frame. It's adding more numbers. It just keeps on going. It's still doing it, but it's still 0. And that's because I didn't really type this the right way. Down here, this walk function, and I may not have called the function properly either. Right leg equals left leg plus 1. Right leg equals right leg plus 1. So this is saying take left, you're going to create a new thing inside that empty box. You're going to take what's already there and you're going to add 1 to it. So now maybe this will work.
You have a plus sign instead of an equal sign.
I do have a plus sign instead of an equal sign. I'm a bad programmer. All right, boop, and then boop. There we go. Now I'm adding numbers every single frame. See that? So my instructions here, create empty boxes. There's an automatic function setup that creates something. Right now there's nothing in there. What you might want to put here is like create canvas 600 by 600. So we know that should look familiar from Photoshop. That's creating a raster graphic image that's 600 pixels wide by 600 pixels tall. And then if I do background 0, that'll be black. 0 to 255 as one number is black to white. If you had 3 numbers, 0 to 255, processing would read that as channels. If you only have one number there, it reads it as black or white. Now, each of these are functions. It's calling functions. This background function is not a JavaScript function. It's not built into JavaScript. It's built into P5. The P5 library is what allows me to write background 0. This calls the function background, which is over in one of those library files that we downloaded. Does that make sense to everyone? Cool. So I'm going to Command S. Now you should see a 600 by 600 pixel black square pop up right there when I refresh. Boom. And because of my HTML, it happens after the body, the nonsense that I wrote in the body of the HTML. And my program is still just counting away because I told it to do it every single frame. Every single frame in Draw, go look for the walk function. Function walk adds 1 to left leg and adds 1 to right leg, and it does it every single frame because I call that instruction every single frame. Make sense?
Is VAR for variable?
Variable, yes. Var is empty box. Magic empty box. So we have covered a lot of ground here, and we're almost out of time. So I'm going to show you where to look for things to play with. There was something else I wanted to show. God, what was it? Can't remember. So that's fine. It just went away.
Should we have been doing that with
No. I didn't want everyone to have to go through that. Today, I just want you guys to look at what other people have done and play with it. In this class, I've been trying to avoid making you guys create accounts and log into things because that's how Cambridge Analytica stuff happens. But I do need you guys to create 2 accounts, I think. You may or may not need to create an account in Open Processing in order to look at our class. And if we have no other text editors, I'm pretty sure you will have to make an account to submit the assignment for this class, which is unfortunate. Also, you guys are going to need to create a blog somewhere. I don't care where. You may have a blog already. Tumblr, Blogger, and WordPress are all free, great places to create a blog. I would myself not put any personal information in my account for those 3 things.
So I should make a separate Tumblr from the one that I have now.
If you have one already, you can totally use it, but you're going to have to upload all of your assignments to class to it. So if you don't want those to be part of your social media presence, then yes, you should create another one.
I have no idea how to do that.
We're going to do it as a class. Like that's the last part of this class. I'm just warning you that it's coming up. That's one of the goals of this class is to teach you how to do that. And I think of one of the reasons why I feel justified in doing all this processing in P5 nonsense that normally isn't part of the curriculum is because it teaches you what's happening when you do that, rather than just creating a Facebook account. Does that make sense? Great. So. This is what a program looks like. This is what JavaScript looks like. Now, in our module, you guys don't need to follow me exactly here, but the rest of the class is just printing and play. I do want you guys all to print your last assignment for critique on Monday. We're going to leave all this for a class period and talk about the last assignment.
Are we ever going to do the logos?
Eventually, I need to figure out. It's a whole different thing. I didn't like how that went. We kind of need to revisit branding entirely, and so I'm going to do something with it later. I want to keep marching for the moment. Yeah?
What dimensions and stuff do you want it printed as? Like on just a regular size piece of paper, or?
I think I have it in the assignment. Let me answer that question in a moment. But yeah, I believe I can look at it right now. Assignments. I did digital collage. 8 by 10. So yeah, print it onto an 8 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, and yeah, just center it.
It's like a regular book.
Yeah, just regular piece of
She's
paper.
talking about
The digital collage.
Okay.
Yeah. So I want, after I stop talking, and not before I stop talking, I want everyone to print your assignment, or at least I'm giving you time so that I don't care whether you do it by the end of the class, but you have to have it in your hands when you come to class on Monday. So this is the time you can do that without having to do it outside of class. That's great. Yeah, you're fine. You're fine. That's what I instructed everyone to do in the assignment. So in our modules now, we should see Module 5, Generative Design, which we have barely even talked about generative design as a principle, but we now know the backbones of how programmatic art can happen. If we have the link to P5, if you want that, we have the link to Coding Train, which are all of Daniel Schiffman's tutorials for P5. We have the video we watched at the beginning of class to talk about what HTML, JavaScript, CSS are. Generative design examples, don't click that link. That link's going to be too complicated for anything we've done so far. I will show it when we return. But open processing, it should take you to our class. Open processing needs to go in a new window. This is a class I have started on an open processing platform. This is where we're going to submit our assignments. And this is the default test example. You're going to eventually add your sketch here. I will put another link that's just to open processing and not my class. But if you go to just openprocessing.org, and if you log out of me, sign out. Okay. Doop, doop, doop. Openprocessing.org and go. You will see this. And you will have all of these examples of things people have built with this. If you click any given one of them, it will show you. Click, drag, or caress the mouse. God only knows what that means.
What does that last one mean?
The great thing about this is right now I have no idea. The artist wrote that in the description. I don't know whether it's a man or a woman, wants me to click, drag, or caress the mouse. So I don't know what that means, but I can look at their code and find out what they mean. So I'm going to click and drag. Whoa! All right, so this is happening. And I still don't know what caress means, but they've created some sort of force orbiter.
Play with the wheel?
Yeah, no. So I still want to know what, and then it slowly loses steam and hits friction. That's cool. This is the sort of thing that you make in the early stages of nature of code, because it's all dealing with forces and gravity systems and stuff. So if you click this little tag bracket, this is all their actual code. So let's see what I'm going to Command F and just search for mouse on the page. It doesn't show me anything with it says mouse right here, you stupid pout. It is doing things based on the position of the mouse, mouse clicked and mouse dragged. There is nothing happening by just mouse movement. Actually, after it creates a new particle, that seems to be based on where the mouse is. So wherever the mouse is, it creates a particle. That's right, so it still only happens when it's clicked or dragged. So caressing the mouse is just nonsense. They did that just to be cute. Yeah. But that's how you look around, openprocessing.org. The rest of this class period is to look at examples and print out your papers. Thank you all very much for your time and attention today. I know that was a bit of a slog. I hope you all learned something.